So we're going to move on and we're going to talk about some aspects of pregnancy weight gain and also pregnancy nutrition, maternal nutrition that is, and how it affects pregnancy. So first off, obviously women gain weight during pregnancy. And the question of how much weight women should gain during pregnancy is really actually to a certain extent somewhat controversial, or at least it's evolving, and it's really dependent. The recommendations on weight gain is really highly dependent on the weight that women were before they were pregnant, so pre-pregnancy weight. So in general, for a woman who was of sort of ideal normal weight, the recommendation for pregnancy weight gain is about 24 to 28 pounds. Okay, and so here you sort of see the dark black box represents sort of the average weight gain, the range of weight gain that women with sort of normal BMIs pre-pregnancy tend to gain. Okay, so this is the spread, but the recommendation for an average weight woman is between 24 to 28 pounds. Okay, and you can see that the weight gain is sort of fairly linear in terms of time across pregnancy. For women who start off underweight, which is the top line, they are recommended to gain more weight during pregnancy. And for underweight women, they're recommended to gain approximately 30 pounds, right? So it was 24 to 28 pounds for normal weight women. Underweight women, at least 30 pounds is thought to be the recommendation. And then for overweight women, which is this last line, for overweight women, the weight gain that's recommended is between 10 to 20 pounds, 10 to about 15 pounds. Okay, sort of, and this is really the group of women whose weight gain recommendation is sort of evolving. What's evolving about this is that what sort of new research is starting to find is that for overweight women, it may not be as detrimental to baby as previously thought. In fact, it may be even potentially beneficial for these overweight women to actually gain maybe even less than the recommended 10 to 20 pounds. Okay, and even more controversial is obese women actually losing weight during pregnancy. So that's really an area of intense sort of research and controversy currently. But most textbooks at the moment and most clinicians at the moment will recommend a weight gain for overweight women of between 10 to 20 pounds. And of course, this depends on how in the spectrum of overweight to obese women start off during pregnancy. And then there's a total weight gained across the entire pregnancy, and then there's the pattern of weight gain. So a fairly common normal pattern of weight gain is a gain of about 8 pounds or so in the first trimester. So there's a chunk of weight in the first trimester, which is fairly low, and then from the second trimester on, there's a gain of about 1 pound per week for the rest of gestation. Now, the gain in weight in that first trimester is certainly not due to baby, because the baby fetal tissue actually is very small coming out of the first trimester. But those 8 pounds or so that women gain in the first trimester really reflects the expansion of blood volume and the retention of water that occurs, and some accumulation of fat stores that occurs as a result of that first trimester. Okay, so where does all the weight go? Okay, so if we look at the breakdown of where this additional weight gain goes in terms of a normal, healthy pregnancy, you can see that there's a considerable amount of weight that is going towards mostly maternal tissue. So, so fetal tissue is really about 39% of the total weight gain in pregnancy, which means a 60%, over half of that weight gain, is actually not attributable to the baby. So blood volume, or blood, accounts for 22% of the weight. So that's pretty significant. Amniotic fluid, about 11%. Increase in breast tissue, 8%. Right? Placenta, 9%. Overall uterus, minus baby, 11%. So all in all, if you look at all of the sort of fluid compartments that are getting expanded, which is going to include blood, amniotic fluid, that sort of thing, about 62% of the weight gain during pregnancy is actually water, okay? Which is really why, if you talk to a lot of pregnant women who have had their babies, you find that within the first week or two, they drop significant amounts of weight, 10, 20, 30 pounds, depending on how much weight they gained at term right before delivery. So it's about over 60%, about 62% of the weight gain is attributable to water. About 30% is attributable to fat, 8% protein, and overall, as I said, only about 39% can be attributed to baby, and the rest is really mom. So the general pattern of weight gain really matters during pregnancy. We talked about sort of the total weight gain across all of pregnancy, but the pattern of your weight gain actually really matters. The weight that is gained early in pregnancy, right, is really more attributable to maternal fat stores, and the weight that is gained towards the end of pregnancy is much more attributable to the fetus and water. Okay, so for mom and having a sort of a healthy pattern of weight gain, it's very important for mom to control weight gain early in pregnancy, since physiologically, as we'll go through, her body is really geared towards building fat stores. So she's much more prone to building fat early in pregnancy, and that weight gain that occurs early in pregnancy, if it is too much, mom, after the baby is born, mom is going to have that she's going to carry through that additional weight gain and have to deal with that weight gain after she's given birth. So if she starts off underweight, that's certainly not a problem, but starting off normal or overweight, that becomes an issue. And there's unfortunately a very high percentage of women who retain some weight gain after they've had their babies and sort of well into post baby. Okay, so what does it actually cost to be pregnant? And we're talking in terms of nutritional cost. So the nutritional or caloric, right, energetic cost of pregnancy actually can be calculated, and this is sort of supposed to be a representation of that calculation, where you've got kilocalories, which is really actually 1,000 calories. Okay, although when we think about calories, the calories that we see on the label of boxes are actually kilocalories. So you can actually just think this is calories on the y-axis, and then on the x-axis we have time. So you can see that the cost of pregnancy, calorically, energetically, can be estimated by calculating the cost of new maternal tissue, so the amount of protein, new protein that needs to be made, new fat that needs to be made, and then also adding in, and that includes baby, right, maternal and baby, and then also adding in the cost of maintaining all that new tissue throughout pregnancy. So adding that all together, it breaks down to about 80,000 kilocalories total over the course of 40-week pregnancy. Now, per day, that 80,000 calories breaks down to about an additional 350 calories per day, or kilocalories per day. So 350 calories per day doesn't sound like a whole lot. It's maybe just an additional meal. But interestingly, if you look at most women, without having any restriction to their diet, and sort of eating to appetite, on average, women will not consume an additional 350 calories per day. In fact, on average, women tend to consume about 200 more calories a day, which is less than the sort of theoretical 350. Now, and on top of that, women who live in developing countries or poorer parts of the world actually tend to take in far less than 200 additional calories per day. Now, women tend to compensate for this difference in actual calories taken in versus sort of calories really needed to maintain a pregnancy. Women compensate for this. Physiologically, their bodies compensate by increasing the efficiency of metabolic systems. So that's something that happens inside. But on the outside, women also compensate for it by decreasing energy expenditure. So most women during pregnancy are going to decrease their overall physical activity. And since they're less active, they expend less energy and therefore can sort of offset that caloric intake compared to caloric needs by just burning less calories, basically. Okay. However, if a woman does not, even with reducing their energy expenditure, if a woman does not take in an adequate amount of calories and therefore energy, especially in the first trimester, this has a high association with low birth weight infants and congenital abnormalities. And we'll talk more about that, where women actually are undernourished during pregnancy and the effect on the baby. Okay. And energy requirements for pregnancy, we're sort of using this graph and sort of looking at it at face value, but energy requirements are not equal across pregnancy. They actually are at their highest in the middle part of pregnancy, between 10 to 30 weeks. That's really where energy intake has its greatest need. So in addition to an increased caloric needs during pregnancy, there's also an increase in nutrient needs, right? So the calories is just the energy that it can be deemed or acquired from that food. However, the nutrients refers to the composition of those calories, the protein content, the content in calcium, phosphorus, iron, the different vitamins and micronutrients. Okay? So while a woman can reduce or compensate for increased caloric intake by reducing her energy expenditure, you can't compensate for an increase in nutritional needs during pregnancy. So women who are pregnant have an increased need for nearly every nutrient that we normally need, including all of the nutrients on this list. So if women are only taking in 200 calories worth of food, but really theoretically needing 350 calories worth of food, that means that 200 calories worth of increased food needs to actually all of the food she's taking in needs to be much higher in nutritional density. Okay? So consuming 200 additional calories and empty calories, right? Things like junk food is not going to provide the woman or the baby with the nutrients it needs. So food is actually during pregnancy needs to be even more nutritious than it was pre-pregnancy. So there is an increased need for all of these nutrients And protein is at the top of the list, right? And so you see here there's an explanation for the reason there's an increase need during pregnancy of all of these nutrients. But protein requirements are thought to be an incredibly important need during pregnancy. So the protein is required to support both the increase in maternal tissue and fetal tissue. And mothers who have babies that are in optimal birth weight range, they tended to take in, on average, more protein than women who gave birth to lower birth weight babies. So protein intake seems to be highly correlated to overall birth weight and achieving an optimal birth weight. Women usually in developed countries have very little problem consuming enough protein, right? Especially if they're consuming things like lean meats, fish, milk products. Women, however, who are vegetarian and vegan, they can actually consume certainly enough protein, but there needs to actually be a much greater attention to the quality of the foods that they're consuming and the protein content of those foods. So women who are eating sort of a conventional diet in a developed country seem to have no problems. In fact, most women who are not pregnant are consuming 2-3 times their needed protein. So it can be sort of not even a thought in the mind of a woman in a developed country with a conventional diet. There needs to be a little more attention to a woman with a non-conventional diet, vegetarian, vegan. However, women who who have diets with protein content that is too high actually starts to increase the risk of harming the fetus. So proteins, and we're talking about extremely high protein diets. So the reason for that is, ammonia is produced when we digest proteins, and as is urea. And the fetus really has sort of a limited ability to detoxify ammonia and get rid of urea, which is especially true during the first trimester. So women who, there's sort of a curve of optimal protein intake, where at the low ends of the protein spectrum, increasing protein intake positively enhances fetal outcomes, but then beyond optimal protein intake, increasing your protein consumption, the curve starts to go down in terms of fetal outcomes. Okay, so too little protein is not good. Way too much protein is not good, but enough protein is excellent. Okay. Additionally, maternal intake of the B vitamins and other minerals like magnesium are very well correlated to optimal birth weights for babies. So, it's obviously not just about protein or calories. It's really about many of these vitamins and nutrients.